step into your office. I am fresh off a trip from D.C., so let's start there with Josh Harris. He walks into your office after his ownership has agreed, has come to an agreement with Dan Snyder to purchase the Washington Commanders. If Harris does indeed secure the team for a very cheap price, $6.05 billion, he'll be inheriting a franchise that's had more name changes than playoff games the last 5 years, not to mention the investigations in the workplace culture paired with longstanding lack of on-field success. How should Harris approach building a new culture in Washington?
Well, the first thing I would tell Josh Harris is you're going to have to deal with the fact that you own the 76ers and you're going to take your team into Lincoln Financial against the Eagle fans who are passionate. So you're going to have to answer that question. You're going to have to be able to sell yourself as an owner of two teams in two different cities, both with passionate fan bases. Now, I don't know how he handles when the Devils come to play the Flyers. The Flyers haven't been relevant. The Eagles are. So I think he's going to have to address that issue off the top to make people comfortable about his ownership of the 76ers. The second thing I would tell him is you have no idea how deep the problems are within this organization. You think you know, but you have no idea. There has been a pattern of reckless driving that has gone on in this building. It's not a fender bender. And so you're going to have to cleanse this building, and you're going to have to spend a lot of time in D.C., in Ashburn, out there at the facility, to understand what the level of problems you're inheriting before you can solve them. Hanging the banner under new management isn't going to solve any problems. It's going to be very challenging. And so for me, he has to really dig deep. And it's only through his actions are going to win people back over, not through the sign of under new management. Everybody initially is going to be happy, but who is Josh Harris and what does he believe in and what culture does he instill? And then he's going to have to spend a lot of time training the people that are there how to behave and act normally. Because let's face it, they've been abused. They have been in an abused environment. We can call it whatever we want, but they have been in an abused environment because the owner has been very toxic. And so you're going to have to educate the people within the building. My recommendation to Josh Harris would be to start all over. Change the name of the team. Change the color of the uniforms. Get everything out of the way that says anything about Dan Snyder. Honor Sean Taylor. Honor the players that came through that had to endure the same thing that the people in the organization have. But really get rid of his tenure. Because, look, let's face it, he's won 2 playoff games. He's been below 500. It has been one of the worst ownership groups in sports. You basically have to detox the organization.
Yeah, only 5 other teams had a worse record in the 24 years that Snyder has owned the team. And does that include front office then, like president, head coach,
I think he's got to go
GM?
through. I think he's got to spend some time evaluating everybody. He's got to ask himself the fundamental question: is Ron Rivera the right guy to lead the entire organization? Do we really believe Ron Rivera should be the general manager, should be in control of all the football operations when he hasn't been in the playoffs in 5 years? No, Josh Harris comes from a general manager background to a head coach, so he separated those duties. We see it in Philadelphia with Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey. I think he's got to address that. He's got to ask himself, do I have the right people in the right places? These people were hired by the guy that we're just getting rid of. Are they the right people?
None of the 7 coaches, in fact, hired by Dan Snyder, finished with a winning record. Ron Rivera in year 4 of his 5-year contract.
Well, let's be clear here. Ron Rivera would not be here today if we were still operating under the Dan Snyder regime. The only reason he survived is because Dan Snyder has been muted and sent to Elba over off the coast of Italy like Napoleon.
Only one coach, actually. Jay Gruden lasted more than 4 years under Snyder, so that's absolutely, I see that.